Venice has been experiencing heavy flooding as overwhelming tides sent high waters into the streets and into shops. Local authorities say the high tide went above 5 foot yesterday afternoon. That is the fourth highest level ever recorded. City officials say up to 75% of Venice was underwater and that water had blocked off access to the central St. Mark's Square, which was also heavily flooded. Well, Kat Bauer is a writer and blogger who lives in Venice, and she joins me now. Morning, Kat. Thanks a lot for joining us. So what's the situation there this morning?
Well, everything seems to be fine right now, but the thing to understand about Acqua Alta is that it's a tide. It comes in and it goes out. So this is an extremely high tide. It's not a flash flood or something like that. It's a tide. So right now everything's fine, but I'm not sure what time it is. A few hours later, it will again be another high tide.
So what happened yesterday?
There's a combination of things that happen to cause Acqua Alta. It's a combination of the wind and the moon sometimes. So this all culminates and produces an extremely high tide at this time of year. So that's not exceptional. That happens often. What is different is this was an exceptional high tide. And I've lived here for 20 years, and I don't think I've ever seen it that bad as it was yesterday.
The footage we're seeing looks pretty dramatic. Where were you yesterday when the high tide came in?
Well, I started around. I went on a little journey to see things for my blog, and I started at Academia and went to Rialto. And by the time I got to Rialto, you could not get off the Vaporetto stop. My boots were not high enough. I got soaked, and I just gave up because you needed to have thigh-high boots by that time to move without getting wet. So it's the tourists were having a bit of an adventure because it is something unique, but it's very, very frustrating and very stressful for the shop owners because they've got to clean out their shops, and it's really very destructive. So it's not fun for the people who live here.
No, it certainly doesn't look it. I mean, we're looking at pictures now of shops completely flooded, chairs and tables floating through restaurants. I mean, what happens with these shop owners? Do they know if the tide is going to be this high today?
I don't think it's going to be as high as it was yesterday today, but I don't think we expected it to be that high yesterday. The good thing about we had warning. I remember in 2008, we had a similar high tide, which they were calling Acqua Grande, which I don't know if that yesterday's was also. But we didn't have a warning system like we have now in place. So we were warned well in advance that this was going to happen. Schools were closed, museums were closed, the shop owners had time to prepare. So we've got a siren that sounds sort of like an air raid siren that warns us, and then there's it has these tones that sound like Close Encounters of the Third Kind tones, and there's 4 of them, and we never have 4 tones. We usually have 1 or 2. 3 is scary, but yesterday was 4 tones, and your stomach just gets in a knot when you hear each tone go up, up, up until it's the 4th tone, and you just say, I mean, this is the first time this year, but after several in a row, it just gets exhausting.
That sounds pretty scary, Kat. Aren't there barriers underground that are meant to stop some of that flood water?
Well, they built Moses, which I think everybody knows, at least it seems like common knowledge around here, but it's not working yet. It was a lot of people went to jail because it was a lot of corruption went into building this system that's supposed to stop the water, and it's still not functioning. So I don't know when it's going to function, if ever.
So how prepared was the city if that clearly didn't work, those underground barriers? How prepared were the shop owners? You said that there was this warning system, but if you look at the footage, it looks like water has flooded a lot of the shops, a lot of the restaurants.
Well, because we're not, for instance, when I got to Rialto and I couldn't get off the Vaporetto stuff without getting wet, I said, but why aren't you prepared for this? And they said they were prepared for, you're using feet for 120 meters, not 160 meters, which is what it was yesterday. And the platform floated away. So they aren't prepared, because this doesn't happen that often. It doesn't happen that often that we have to prepare for something this high. So you can't do anything, you know, it's the shop owners can't do anything. Everybody's doing the best that they can do, but even the restaurant that is always open had to close. And I don't know, it's Mother Nature.
What happens today, Kat? You said yesterday schools closed, shops closed, and everyone tried to get prepared. But what happens today? What happens this morning?
Well, schools are closed again today. And, you know, the shop owners, everybody's pretty independent. Like every shop there's no white knight coming to save people. Every shop owner has to take care of his own shop. Every business has to take care of their own business. So everybody's got like water pumps and doors they put up to block the water. But so they're just going to have to do the same thing again. That's what's going to happen. We'll have to do the same thing again. And that's what when the novelty wears off, if you live here, it's not fun by the time you have to do it the 5th time, the 6th time, the 7th time. Hopefully it won't be as high again as it was yesterday, I hope. But it's part of life of living in Venice.
Okay, Kat, well, look after yourself, and thanks for talking to us this morning.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now, Google Philip Howe